A 10-20 fixed limit longhand game at PartyPoker. Since it's a higher limit game, this game's going to be tighter than games most people are used to. As you can see here, I just folded 4-5 offsuit in the big blind. There was one raiser before the flop, and that hand's just not good enough to call a raise. It's folded to me again. This is a pretty bad, tight table. I'm going to go ahead and try to steal here in the small blind. I got called, so that failed. I hit the flop pretty well. I got kind of lucky. That call on the flop by him could just be trying to hit the turn. He might be just trying to test me. So I went ahead and bet it again. Go ahead and go fold here. Just because the game is tight doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad game. When you're at the lower stakes games, there's really no point in playing a tight game because generally the looser games will be more profitable. But when I play a higher stakes game, just because it's tight doesn't necessarily mean it's a horrible game. I'd always prefer a loose, crazy game over a tight game, but sometimes people are too tight, so the game could still be profitable, albeit just not as profitable as a loose, crazy game. Got a mediocre hand here, gonna fold it pre-flop. This is the type of stuff I don't like to see in a game, when one player raises pre-flop with the other, perhaps a blind calls, and there's a bunch of betting and raising at the flop. That generally means the players are pretty good. So it's normally best to avoid this type of game, but I'm going to continue just to play it anyways. The one thing about this game is people's stacks are pretty low, which generally implies that players are more casual players, not really professionals. But in a limit game, that's just a general observation. That's by no means necessarily true. In a no-limit game, having a big stack is necessary if you want to take another player's big stack, but in a limit game, you really don't need a big stack. The only reason good players tend to have larger stacks is just because they have more money in their accounts and they just don't want to be low at the table. Got to fold his hand again. Because this game is so tight, I can't play suited connectors and hands like that. I also have to be more cautious in early position. If you're playing lower limits and people are limping pre-flop, you can be more liberal with the hands you call with. But since the game's tight, I need to tighten up as well. I can steal more, I can make more bluffs, but I can't play hands for value like suited connectors and stuff like that. Like a small pair pre-flop in early position like a pocket fours, I'd fold. I'd raise it in late position if no one else entered the pot, but early position I gotta fold because I can't play that hand for set value. Typical flop bet and then a check raise, perhaps testing him, or sometimes people will bluff check raise pre-flop in higher stakes games because generally if someone's check raising they have a good hand, so people will sometimes fold. It's apparently I think this is the case of someone with a pocket pair slowing down when they saw the ace come. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and re-raise, isolate the raiser. Pair of sixes plays much better heads up than three-handed. Go ahead and bet out. At this point I'm done I best I could be hoping for a king queen. I could have bet on the turn there. Maybe he'd fold. Maybe he had a jack queen, but I decided to just let him have it. I was pretty sure he had a better hand than me. It's just a matter if I could bluff him out on the turn, and generally I'm not going to be able to. It's interesting that this person called all the way. Well, that's a nice hand pre-flop. Seemed fairly obviously that one of them had something. This is the hand history here. You can see everyone betting and calling. As you can see here, the person called on the turn really without odds, and have to assume that the person going all in, at least one of them has a decent hand. So I'll probably disagree with that turn call there. As you can see, there's people making a few mistakes here and there, like that turn call, and just some people, there are probably people folding when they shouldn't be folding. But there's really not too many mistakes being made at this table. Not as much as you'd see in a lower stakes game, at least. And mistakes are where your profit comes from, so the more mistakes my opponents make, the better. See, in this type of hand, there should be a little more action, because there's essentially two big blinds and one small blind with the post, but people are just folding anyways. I obviously have to fold my 4-8, but you'd think that someone else would be in the pot as well. It's little mistakes like that that some people are probably making that makes this game potentially profitable. It's interesting. Anyways, I'm going to raise my ace-king here. Probably won't get any action at this table, but I'm perfectly content stealing the blinds. It's not like I have a pair of aces. I still need to hit the board with ace-king to really make it any good most of the time. This is a folding hand right here. Most of the time when people are playing boring games like these, they play multiple tables at once. Of course, that's only a good idea if the person's winning at boring games like these, because even if it's a boring game, if you're a losing player, you're just going to lose more money by playing more tables. But winning players, or actually, it's nice to have a boring game like this if you have like 4 tables open, because if you're constantly playing short-handed games, it can get kind of frustrating for some people. Some pros can easily handle 4 heads-up games, and it doesn't bother them at all, but most normal people can't handle that, even if they are semi-professional players. Got ourselves a pot here. Fortunately, I missed the flop. Just going to go ahead and fold to the first bet. I don't necessarily have 6 outs even here, because someone could have king 7 or maybe ace queen or something like that, so I don't have the odds to call. Not much action, but that's an action card on the river. And that's it for this video. Hope you found it informative and entertaining.